My wife wanted a gaming PC, so I built one. And then it was too big, so now my son uses it. She wanted one that I could leave in the living room that wouldn't be too in the way. So for $25, I bought a Dell OptiPlex from a crackhead. Pizza boxes in the window, naked when I showed up, crackhead. When I picked the PC up, it had an i3, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and an old spinning disk hard drive that sounded like marbles in a coffee can. I swapped out the i3 for an i7 3770, replaced the RAM with a 16 gigabyte kit of 1600 megahertz DDR3, and I added in an old low-profile 4 gigabyte RX 550 I had from an earlier build. When I picked the PC up, the person said it had been crashing. I believe this was due to the hard drive because I swapped the hard drive out with a 500 gigabyte SSD even before doing the other upgrades, and this seemed to remedy the situation, although the computer was very, very slow still. At the end of the day, everything ended up costing me around $220, and I was able to get a low-profile, semi-capable gaming PC that my wife seems to be enjoying so far. Played the games at 1080p, but I recorded them at 720p because of some issues I was having with OBS, so they don't look quite as good as they would have looked in person. If you plan on playing older games like BioShock Infinite, this PC will do just fine, averaging over 60 FPS in the early stages of the game at 1080p high settings. Temps never really got much higher than 75 degrees on the CPU or GPU while I was gaming, and the GPU was the limiting factor on most games, meaning there may be room for an upgrade, and I might throw an RX 6400 into this later on down the road. And if you were going to build one, I would recommend the RX 6400, as it's only around $150, and from what I've seen, performs significantly better. PUBG ran quite a bit worse, but it was not at all unplayable, normally around 30 FPS with 1080p low settings and a high view distance, although that does dip down to around 20 to 25 FPS in really busy areas when there's lots of action on the screen. I never found it unplayably stuttery. I would compare it to playing it on the Xbox One a couple years ago. The Witcher 3 plays very similarly. 1080p low settings sees us right around 30 FPS in the first area of the game. Later areas will bring that down to around 15-20 FPS, but you can remedy this by lowering the resolution. I personally would recommend targeting 1280, 720p, 30 FPS with this PC. Just for fun, I loaded up Elden Ring and found it surprisingly playable as well. 1080p low, the FPS stayed right around 30, and it was a fairly smooth 30 FPS. This game's the only one that really gave the CPU a run for its money, occasionally reaching 100% utilization. This game benefited a lot from not having OBS running. Without OBS running, I could bring that 30 FPS average up to around 35 or 40, but it was still kinda stuttery. Not too bad, but not great either. All the games had OBS running while I was recording them, so not having that running does increase the numbers a little bit, but it varies quite a bit, and in this case, really not that big of a difference except for an Elden Ring. I also played R6 and Overwatch. Didn't get any footage of them, but they ran very well, and I had an enjoyable time on them. Good night. Good night. You be sure to come back now. I'm gonna miss you.